think of a project I've been involved with where we were really scared at the beginning, and those have always been the most successful ones. The ones where you thought, blimey, I think we've overdone it this time, you know. Can't think of one that firstly didn't succeed, and secondly, I wasn't told to stop by systems. I'm just going to pick out a couple of examples for you because it's really quite interesting. I was building online learning communities for kids before the internet. We built them with teletext and electronic mail, and they were all pretty exciting. But right in '93, we built schools online, which was pretty brave, and funded, by the way, not by the education department but by industry, who wanted to know what's the purpose of this new cool stuff. You know? And we built a very powerful community-based forum. It was database-driven. You know, and you had those funny, great long URLs that you were characteristic of. And I had this very stern letter came to me from a national body saying, you can't have an internet page like that with young children because the purpose of the universal resource locator was that they'll know where the resources are. It's like Dewey Decimal, you know, they've got to be able to find them. And with your database things, they won't know where to look. And I'd kind of mailed them back and said, look, trust me, you know, this is what it's going to be like, you know. And we didn't speak for some time after that, but of course the project was enormously successful. And later on, I was doing a project with Tesco and our big supermarket chains. And they'd come to me quietly and said, look, Stephen, we've been giving free computers to schools for some time. We're not actually sure anybody's doing anything useful with them. Wonder if you could build a project that would show that it was worth kids having them, you know. And that's a nice brief, and I spent £21 million of their money on that brief. It was a great project, but one of the things we did was to engage everybody in the same task. You know, so I'd said to children, go and find the most famous person where you live, and ask them about their school days. Golly gosh, I remember they went to visit Liz Hurley. Your hair would stand on end with what she did at school. It's amazing, and it was an endless round of kiss chase. You know. And the media, by the way, never picked that up. You know, you know how scurrilous our media are. They never picked any of the stories up because they were children had written the stories, so they couldn't be evaluated. It's fascinating. But we set the same task for 6-year-olds as 16-year-olds. People said you can't possibly do that. And well, we just did, you know. And I think you'll find they'll all do it. They'll do it differently, you know, and there'll be more critiquing here and more starry-eyed here, and it worked extraordinarily well. And then. Third, and indeed went on to be, it was in the Guinness Book of Records, biggest internet learning project in the world, you know. Those were the days, gosh, you know. It's a bit before Facebook, you know. Then we built, this was a big European project, we built these little robotic toys. The project was called Etui, which is a precious thing you keep in your pocket, and I think we'd imagined something about this size. These were robots that children would be able to teach. And the literature at the time was very clear that 8-year-olds could not engage in meta-level reflection about learning. This was 4-year-olds, I beg your pardon, couldn't reflect in meta-level reflection about their learning. It's something that you didn't really do in a sort of Piagetian, rather dull world. You didn't really do that until you were 8 or 9. You know, it was pretty clear that there was an age at which you could do things. And I thought, well, I've worked with a lot of 4-year-olds, and they all seem pretty sharp to me. So we spent 2 years designing these wonderful toys with them. We didn't know what size they were going to be, and I remember I said to a little girl once, how big do you think they ought to be? And she said, I don't mind how big they are. And we thought, that's relief. And then she said, as long as I can ride it to school. You know, oh, blimey, you know, that's a bit bigger than we thought, you know. And they built these most wonderful toys. They designed them, we built them, and of course this is pre-notation, they couldn't program them. They taught them by pushing them around the floor, flashing torches at them, singing to them, you know. It was the most delightful thing. And of course, we had kids who, you know, in all the transcripts were reflecting, you know, and were hugely engaged in that learning about learning, that meta-level reflection that people said couldn't happen. And I just wanted to do. Oh, and by the way, I took them in a sack, took them down to a pub on the embankment on the Thames, because I was living in the boat nearby, you know. And on a Friday night, emptied them out. The pub was full of bankers, which are, you know, interesting how the collective noun for bankers has become bankers, you know. So I emptied them all out on the floor. And 20 minutes later, these chaps were all down on their hands and knees, jackets off, you know, playing with robots and reflecting about learning. I mean, really interesting. The 4-year-olds work, you know, just worked for everybody, of course. And it just it just occurs to me in all this that education systems just do not begin to be ambitious enough for what's possible. You know, I've said 1,000 times, well, to many of you, I don't know how good our kids can be, but I do know they can be flipping stellar. They really can, you know, and every project, you think, golly gosh, I never expected them to be this good. Every single project. Well, if everything succeeds, you know, where was the baseline? And if everything surprises, you know, where were the limits of our systems? Dismal. And I do think we're at the beginning of what I think is the most extraordinary time in learning. You know, learning has never been more cool. You turn on your telly, there's people learning to dance, learning to sing. You know, your man Thorpe is back in the swim pool and people up there interviewing him about how he's training, what he's doing. It's process is there. You know, the whole thing is just fascinating. We've got, you know, 500,000 children watching teachers' TV programs, you know, it's a TV channel, 500,000 kids in the holidays watching programs about how to teach by teachers for teachers. You know, it's never been a better time for learning. Whether it's a better time for education, I doubt very much. I can't see our institutions moving quickly, and I can see our schools moving quickly. I think there's hope. You know, I've been in some stunning schools lately who you know, move really, really quickly. You know, literally overnight. But universities, oh gosh, you know, education departments, crikey, you know, ministers, oh, you know, we know so much science. Last point, really. I'll shut up, you know. But we.
7 people in this room.
No, I haven't offended, because if you're working in an education department, I mean, like, I'm a professor in 4 universities. I'm a professor in a university in Spain, which is just the most delightful place. You know, we eat wonderful food, we have brilliant conversations. But whether the institutions can move quickly enough, you know, whether they can be ambitious. I mean, I'm just to take that trivial point, but I mean, everything you did as 23 and 24-year-olds, kids do today at 15 or 16. You know, from snogging to driving, really. I mean, the whole bit. Why can't they start their degree at 14 or 15? When I talk to children, I ask a lot of children, how early could you start a degree in the thing you care about? You know, and they'll give you figures of 15. I mean, in Andrew's wonderful library here, last year we had a group of children. There was a 15-year-old boy who was writing iPhone apps for his mates because he got fed up with waiting for them in maths, and he thought if he wrote an app he could kind of chivvy them up a bit. And that was October. He mailed me in December. He mailed me in February to say that he'd done what I'd suggested, enrolled for a few university courses, and he was learning a lot about programming. Why? And by the way, apologising, he was going to enrol for less classes in the next year because he was setting up a business with his dad to sell his iPhone apps, which were going out of the door at about 300 a day, and that was going to pay his college fees. You know, why shouldn't we let them get there earlier? I think it's a really big question. And the only thing that stands in their way are systems. And I just think there's a sort of pedagogic Egypt out there. Had a lovely email from Estelle Morris, one of our education ministers, who said, "Gosh, Stephen," after she'd left, you know, "Gosh, Stephen, I don't know why it is that the things that we know work really well, we don't seem to be able to turn them into policy." And you know, I think that is an honest truth from an honest minister. I think it doesn't matter. I think the policy is being made in the classrooms by the children, by the families, by the communities, and that's where change is happening. Systems keeping up, maybe not, I doubt it. But I think learning communities and families of learning, and children especially, are going to make it. And I'm just electrified by that prospect, really. Yeah.
Excellent.
That's it.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm just going to go off script a little bit. So if anyone has one question that Stephen can answer relatively sharply, then I'm open for that one question.
We didn't yet cover sailing, did we?
Yeah. Front. You were bold enough to come to the front.
Yeah. Is it kind of advocating almost like a kind of a turnaround of, rather than kind of bombarding people with what we think they ought to learn, it's more about determining, you know, what it is that they're interested in.
Well,
and just being completely open with the knowledge, let them find and navigate their own way.
No, not really. I mean, I do think engagement is the key. You know, engagement is the secret. If we engage children, we have everything. You know, but they need to know stuff, and you need the fundamental understandings of maths and stuff. I was working with a group of children. I'm just doing some filming for media a week or so ago, and You know, they didn't even know why numbers are the shape they're supposed to, they are. You know, why is a 1 that shape, and why is a 2 that shape, and why is a 3 that shape? If you don't know, it's about the inside angles on the corner. But nobody had even thought to excite them about those things. There's stuff you need to know about poetry before you can write good poems. So there is stuff. But I think it doesn't need to be organised and ordered in the way that we do. I mean, you'll know that teenagers are all very different. Institutions are very different. I mean, you know, some children are barely able to speak before 10:30 in the morning. And teenagers can barely grunt. You know, others, you know, if they're in a swim club, they're up at 6 o'clock and they're at their best before breakfast. But we make them all start school at the same time because it's convenient for us. You know, and the madness of, as I've said a million times, of ringing a bell and expecting 1,000 teenagers to be simultaneously hungry is just completely dotty. You know, I went to a little school in the Cayman Islands. I'm rebuilding the education system there. 4 kids on the island, and Arrow, who's the big boy, was sitting in a room on his own. And I said, why is he sitting on a room on his own? They said, we've only got one 10-year-old. He's in the 10-year-old's room, you know. Which is completely balmy, but no more balmy than putting 25 10-year-olds in the same room together. Why on earth would you do that? There's not. I tell you, I had a master's student. I'd sent him off for 2 years. I said, if you can find one paragraph in one piece of educational research that says putting children together because they're born between 2 Januaries is good, you know, I'll give you a shilling. Well, I mean, he never did. I mean, he searched everywhere. And we just do it because it's handy. And I think education systems are full of things that are handy for the systems and you know, naffle to do with learning and engaging the children. So I think the kids need to learn. The way in which they learn is going to vary, you know, and should vary. Keeping it fresh, you know, is really. Why would you ring a bell and just when a kid's really excited about roche bâtonnets, you know, and rocky outcrops, you know, ring a bell, stop, they go down the corridor, start all over again with the location of castles in medieval Europe, and most of which happen to be on the top of roche bâtonnets, but because it's a history lesson, they don't talk about the rocks, and because it's a geography lesson, they don't talk about the castles. And they waste 10 minutes walking from one to the other. It's palpably dotty, and that will all stop, you know.
I'll be interested in talking to you later about the Steiner education.
Well, you know, Steiner and Montessori, and they've got, all of them have great ideas, but in my model, every community is different. And, you know, I've folk here in schools, you'll know that if it's a windy day, your school is different to when it's not a windy day. So having one fixed way of doing it, I think is, you know, and Steiner, Montessori, and a heap of others have got some really excellent ingredients of learning. Things that playfulness, for example, is really important. In my world, playfulness, you know, we had a playful time last night, you know, so it carries right on. But I think what schools and what communities and what communities of practice need to do is reach out for the best ingredients that have already been tested by people that they trust, bring them home and build a local recipe. And just like all the great coffee shops all over Melbourne, if it was the same recipe day in, day out, you wouldn't go back. So you vary the recipe a bit, and sometimes you add a new spicy ingredient, you know, and you keep it fresh. But keeping it fresh is the key.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for the question.